In this episode, we continue with our examination of the Yuga cycles and history. Looking back at the Tetractys, each one of these dots then equals the duration of 6,048 years. Multiplied by 10, we see the entire Mahakalpa has a value of 60,480 years. So let's look at why we have the Yuga system as the inverted Tetractys. The first age is the Golden Age and has a duration of 4 yugas, which is 24,192 years. The second age, called the Silver Age, is a duration of 3 yugas, which is 18,144 years. The Copper or Bronze Age had a duration of 2 yugas, which is 12,096 years. And the age that we are in now, the Kali Yuga, has the duration of 1 yuga, 6,048 years. With the declining of the number of yugas per age, our perception of time also diminishes. The sense of time in the Golden Age was experienced as a much longer time, because everyone born into an age is a part of that age. It's like the wonder of childhood. Every one of us can remember how time was so much bigger and so much longer when we were children. That is true of tribal men and earlier indigenous cultures. They don't feel the pressure and anxiety of a shortage of time. But in the Kali Yuga, we do have a sense of a shortage of time, because we are all the children of Ma Kali, who states,
"I created all these worlds, and I tend to destroy them."
We live with that sense, whether we know it or not, because we are a part of an age that brings about the ending of a great process of human development. We should think about this in sort of an embryology. We are part of the birth-giving of the anthropocosm. This means that humanity is, and is aware, and is conscious of the universe. We are just one stage in the birth of that being, the anthropocosm. This is not evolution, as this growth is cyclical. It's not the nature of laws of adaptation and struggle and survival. It's the laws inherent in the intention of the creation of a time-space universe. It's there from the beginning, and it is ours, if we can see it to its final and glorious conclusion. Right now, we are in the Kali Yuga. The Puranas were some of the most ancient texts from India. They tell us that each yuga is preceded by a phase that they call the dawn, and it's concluded by a phase they call the twilight. Just like the birth of a day or a year, all cycles are simply an expansion of the same cycle, and they are all interdependent on a cycle of the Earth, which is 365 days. We will come to connect the duration of the journey of the Earth around the Sun to this larger cycle. Just like the cycle of the Earth, it manifests in this triangular triad of dawn. First is the central region of time. Next is the body of the day or night. And finally, twilight. It is that constant progression, dawn, yuga, twilight, dawn, yuga, twilight, which takes us from yuga to yuga and age to age. Here we come to very interesting variations on our basic number of 6,048. The Puranas specify that the yuga is divided into 10 units, each one having a particular accomplishment in terms of the process of the unfolding of the divinity into this materialization. The durations of the dawn and twilight are 504 years. There are 10 of these, which give us a yuga of 5,040 years, with a dawn of 504 years, and a twilight of 504 years, with a total of 6,048. 504 for dawn, 5,040 as a duration of the yuga, 504 for twilight, and 6,048 in total. This is very important for us to know, because these are divisions within historic time. All the yugas are the same, except they come in different multiples to form the ages, to form the 4 great ages of man. Our modern Gregorian calendar may have been created by someone who was conscious or aware of the Yuga dates. Because of the synchronicity with the Yuga system, our calendar became consistently parallel with the Hindu calendar. Both our calendar and the ancient Indian calendar denote the beginning of the Kali Yuga in 3102 BC. This is the beginning of the last Yuga of a 60,000-year cycle. Mathematically, we can locate the dawn of that cycle. Simply add 504 years before 3102, which is 3606 BC. When did we go into the twilight of our age? That day came in roughly 1938 to 1939. That is when the formulas for the nuclear bomb were finalized. That's when Hitler moved into Poland and provoked the Second World War. There are numerous historic events which happened in the beginning of the shadow of twilight. From this point on, we descend to the finality of the Kali Yuga. We can see that the dawn of the Kali Yuga began in 3606 BC, and the very end of the twilight of the Kali Yuga will end in 2442 AD. We can utilize these dates to describe different events which go right down to the duration of the multiples of 7, which are the key fundamental of the Yuga system. Now let's look at another series of numbers. 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 equals 5040. 7 times 8 times 9 times 10 also equals 5040. In other words, 7 is the very heart of the generation of the Yuga number. Is that a fortuitous circumstance, or is that the fact that the number is an aspect of the nature of time? Hindu philosophy considered time to be the mind of the universe. It is the aspect of the universe that carries clear and exact numeric values and descriptive durations. Coming back to historical events related to the Yuga, if we add 7 to 1938, we get 1945, when they dropped the atomic bomb. It's the same year the United Nations was founded as a one-world order. 7 years later, 1952, was the date they began research into biological weapons. It was Eisenhower who wanted a large amount of money spent on biological weapons. We start to see the continuous shadow of the decomposing functions of the Yuga. These shadows of human history are aspects of the nature of time and the necessity of having a continuous creation that experiences birth, death, and rebirth. We'll come back to the tetractys diagram because it is the archetype of not only time, but space. This is why the tetractys was the great teaching tool of the entire Pythagorean legacy. Pythagoras called it a sacred diagram, and that it is a permanent representation of the factuality of creation. Pythagoras, unlike Plato and Aristotle, was not an equational thinker. He was a proportional thinker. He saw one thing as in relation to another, in the same or similar way that something else is in relationship to another thing. That's what we call proportional thinking. The circle of time of the Yugas implies the differentiation of our reality into 4 aspects or qualities. We are going to run through some of the characteristics of each of the 4 ages and align them with some of the most basic ways that we define our individual being. 4 ways of individuation are the 4 stages of life: childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and old age. Each age is equal to a stage of life within each living organism. In organized civilizations, there are 4 castes. People are cast by their vocational aptitudes, and those 4 castes are the priests and scholars, which are called Brahmins, the royalty, the kings and princes, called the Kshatriya, the merchants and bankers, known as the Vaishyas, and the 4th, the Shudra, which is the working class, the people who manipulate successfully and creatively the material world. The Shudra is, of course, the largest caste, but each caste dominates during an age. Each stage of life is a dominant stage during the 4 ages of the Yugas. there are also 4 forms of sexual expression. We have the feminine, the masculine, the masculine within the feminine, and the feminine within the masculine. The variations become dominant principles in successive ages. There are also 4 major cultures. There's the nomadic hunter and gatherer, the nomadic herding people, horticultural people, and finally, the urban settled populations, which incorporate and control all of the other attributes. For the most part, each one of us as an individual is and has to participate in each one of these categories of identity. The 4 ages or yugas are also similar to the 4 seasons of the year. We can start with the first culture, the first age, the golden age, the longest age. This is the springtime of our species. The cultural form at that time is nomadic hunting and gathering. This is really the golden age of our physicality and our intelligence. Time itself was slower. Days and years stretched forever in the golden age. Because the earth and soil were filled with minerals, the plants that humans ate had much higher amounts of natural vitamins, nutritional substances, and amino acids than the plants we eat today, which need chemicals and genetic processing to grow. Of all the cultures on Earth today, one of the closest to the hunter-gatherer cultures of the Golden Age are the Aborigines of Australia. Robert Lawler did an intensive investigation into that culture, which resulted in his classic book, Voices of the First Day. Australian Aborigines have incredible linguistic capabilities. They had knowledge and memory of thousands of species. They memorized their relatives and ancestors all the way back for many generations. They had a sensing of where they were in time and space at every moment that we do not possess anymore. In terms of the intelligence that nurtures the independence of the physical organism, that is the golden age of man. We have an intelligence that breeds dependency of our physical being and manifestation. The golden age was when mankind was free in a world where they respected the earth and wandered freely. They fulfilled more than any cultural form. That is the reason why the earth was created in the first place. The Gnostic myths of Sophia tell us that Sophia was a formative energy force from the center of the galaxy. She, on her own volition, decided to sacrifice her being as a force in order to become a habitat, a womb, for a creature who would be able to observe, to perceive, and conceive the wonders of the universe that were being produced in the mind of the All. That culture is the indigenous free culture because they constantly wandered around in the unfettered, undisturbed beauty of the natural world and learned everything through their perception of creation. The sexualities in the Golden Age are feminine, not the emphasis of the feminine within the masculine, which is what dominates the priest caste of the Third Age, the Copper Age, nor the masculine within the feminine, which dominates the urban world of the Modern Age, or the Kali Yuga. The Golden Age was a casteless society, but of the castes as we know them, they represented the Shudra. That was the age where the people of the earth and of the hand dominated. This is the age where we learned symbolism, sacred geometry, and the physical emphasis of the universe. The tribal form predominated. In the later ages, the Shudra would have to be captured to be drawn into the hierarchical system of cities. We'll put the Second Age, the Silver Age, at the opposite pole in terms of caste. The aristocracy of the 4 castes, the royalty, ruled the Second Yuga, the Silver Age. This was the age in which they invented kingship and the age where such values as honor and courage were kindled. The aristocracy, especially in Egypt, with the invention of the king and queen, represented the highest evolution of the people at that time, and they had the responsibility for the continuation of memory. That's what the kings and the pharaohs were. They were the guardians of the truth of history and protectors of the behavior and ethics of a culture. They carried the Ka from one generation to another. The Ka is an aspect of the soul in Egyptian mythology. We will describe the Ka in greater detail in later episodes of this series. The sexuality of this age would be masculine-masculine. Of the four cultures, it would also be the beginning of the agricultural phase. The eating of naturally produced foods was ending, and now humans were no longer free to wander the earth. Now the earth had to be tilled. Man was turned from a hunter to a farmer. It's recorded in the Puranas that when the Second Age came to end, the aristocracy had become so degenerate that the Brahmins, the priest caste, murdered the complete aristocratic caste. Only a very few royal bloodlines escaped, and this is how the priests took control in the Third Age. That would be the Copper or Bronze Age. The sexuality of the priest caste is the feminine within the masculine. The priests dominated the entire Third Age. Egypt and India both went through this phase. This genocide is clearly marked in Hindu texts, when the priest caste, through poisoning and subterfuge, got rid of the kings. Plato said that in the Second Age there was a three-caste society, but the merchants split off from the Shudras in the Second Age when they started kingdoms. The Shudra owned the Golden Age. The aristocracy led the Second Age. The priests and scholars had the Third Age. In the Fourth Age, we find ourselves dominated by the mercantile class. In the Iron Age, we are actually in the Old Age of culture. The decrepitness and dependency that we have nurtured through consumerism is self-evident. This is what happens as we age. We become more and more dependent upon devices to aid us as our health fails. In the Golden Age, time seems forever, whereas in the Iron Age, in the Kali Yuga, time seems to be speeding up. Every second seems shorter than the last one. Days and nights fly by, and a lifetime feels like a mere moment. Corporatism is the merchant class gone wild. The Iron Age is dominated by the Vaishyas, the merchant caste. In terms of seasons, spring is the Golden Age, summer is the Silver Age, fall the Copper Age, and the winter is the Iron Age. Within each age, each one of the castes has a period of strength. The whole cycle of four repeats itself within each of the four castes, cultures, and sexuality. The cultural essence of the Kali Yuga has taken place in America, where they've turned everything, every aspect of life, into a commodity. Even water is sold as a commodity. It's almost like a ritual sacrifice, where the species is given all the material gifts and advantages that once was held by the aristocracy through the means of commerce. The people, the Shudra, can accumulate more wealth than all of the kings and princes held in previous ages. That's what was in the prophecies concerning the Kali Yuga, where the poor want to sleep in the beds of princes. The Vaishya, the merchants, with the excesses of commerce, provides the sacrificial ritual component of the end of the age. He who is to be sacrificed is to be raised to the level of a king. Also, it consumes itself. That can only happen through the Vaishya, through the domination of the world by corporations, that the organism has to consume itself at the end of the cycle. The sexuality of the Iron Age is masculine inside the feminine. The whole business world has caused the feminization of the masculine, and it's actually a feminine force that dominates it, because our world now is one of protection and security overall. Fear of death and overpopulation are the attributes of this. In other words, we are looking at a collection of archetypal characteristics associated with femininity, because it's not really the manifest form, it's the archetypal form. The archetypal feminine is being served, and the masculine has been absorbed within it. This is why a concern for the material world and for safety are what concerns our age the most. Remember, we mentioned that we have been conditioned into a language based on an egalitarian or equivalency pattern which keeps our thinking on a linear basis. We just go from 2 plus 3 equals 5. We ignore that each one of the numerical symbols that we've utilized for this are not mere quantities. They are concepts which imply imagery, which imply philosophical ideas like duality, trinity, and so forth. We are trying to shift our thinking in this discussion of the proportional system that is embedded in the very nature of time. To fully derive value from this exercise, we want to also try to stretch our thinking so that it is multi-layered. For example, to reveal this connection between mathematics and mythology, we can go to our number of the Yuga, 6048, and we find that the square root of this number is 77.77. Now, this is a perfect example of how a quantity begins to expand into astronomy and the movement of the Earth into the symbolic code that's embedded in the simplest series of a succession of numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 4 sevens, and this number embodies 4 ages. As you learn to look for layers in our evaluation of simple quantities, we will be able to uncover more and more of the symbolism that is held in the Yuga system.